Hi, this is your week 3 flea map lesson. It's kind of a weird word, flea map. It means basically a flow map and a tree map together. So if you've ever used either of those thinking maps, a flea map is like to show a progression of a story, and a tree map is to classify things, so put them together, a flea map. So before we start this lesson, you need a couple things. You need the paper that says flea map lesson notes, and it's kind of a 2-page thing. And we'll get to the flea map right now. We just want to kind of talk about pre-writing strategies in general and what to do before you start actually writing. So what should you do when you start the writing process? And this is literally the 4th time we've talked about this, so try to just kind of stick with me for a few minutes, and then we'll practice taking it further with the body of our essay. So first thing you already know is you want to read and analyze the prompt at least 2 times. Analyze it, found the T, the A, the P, know what you're talking about. Then you're going to brainstorm, figure out your actual topic and brainstorm about that. You don't have to be organized with this. This is just like a brain dump. Circle map, dump. After you get it all dumped out on the paper, you're going to categorize these ideas. Look for things that go together. Don't try to force it. Look for things that naturally you already thought of that go together, and try to come up with words for these big ideas, like an umbrella statement for little ideas you had on your brainstorm. Then you want to actually try to organize your ideas. So we've already talked about the spool with the intro, conclusion, and later today we're going to talk about what to do with the body of your paragraphs, the body of your essay, and we're going to use a flea map. Sometimes you get outlines, sometimes a different pattern would work, but for today we're going to try to use a flea map. Then you would actually type your first draft. So just a reminder, make sure you have a good brainstorm. You've already done this part most likely, but you would focus your topic from your writing, and then come up with all your ideas and come up with some categories and compose your thesis. For the one we did before, it was something like a place you would like to visit, and we chose Alaska because of the, let's say, landscape, activities, and the food, or something like that. That was our thesis. Then you're going to try to come up with an intro, conclusion. You don't have to rewrite this whole thing. Just try to remind yourself what the point is. Once you have your thesis statement, that's going to go at the end of your introduction. You don't have to write it inside a triangle, but it's symbolic. You want to start broad, appeal to your audience, and narrow it down to what you're writing about. So you start broad, maybe you write about trips in general, or travel in general, or places in general, and some people might like this one type of place and others might like this one, but I would choose blah because of this. So you're just kind of whittling down your ideas to get to your thesis, and then you just stop. Then you would write the actual body of your essay, and you come back to, eventually, a conclusion. Your conclusion is going to restate your thesis. Just say your main point. Maybe split it up into 2 sentences so it's not so copy-paste. And then the big deal is you want to finish out with a broad point. Actually make a point. What's your point? Okay, what do you want your reader to do with this information? Now, this is where I need to kind of think back to last year, or maybe your teacher didn't use this, so this is new, and we're going to use the flea map to help plan the actual body of our essay. The one that I'm going to show you is just kind of standard, is for if you had 3 categories in your thesis, you could do the exact same thing with only 2 categories, just take off part of it. But you still need to have elaborated paragraphs that have a topic sentence, that have examples and have details, and a wrap-up sentence. So, this is already written on your paper. I just want you to kind of follow along. You would not need to write your thesis again, but this is to help you plan. So you're going to write your thesis, and whatever reasons were in your thesis, whatever categories were in your thesis, you would split them up here. Once you get some categories, you're going to do what we call supporting details and elaboration. And does it have to be 3? Yeah, kind of. 3 minimum. Because you want to say something about your reason and then elaborate it. You want to actually say another thing and then elaborate it. That could be a story, it could be an example, it could be an anecdote, it could be a quote. You want to say something about your category and then elaborate that very thing right there. So for all of the reasons that you come up with, all of the categories in your thesis, you should be able to say at least 6 to 8 things about it, or it's not a big enough category. And then finally, for each little part of your flea map, you want to have a paragraph wrap-up sentence. So ultimately, the cool part here is this whole thing is one paragraph, and this whole thing is another, and this whole thing is another. If you were to kind of really just dive into this, you'd have the bulk of your paper already planned out. Because your intro conclusion you would have already done with the spool thing. And then paragraph 2, paragraph 3, paragraph 4, and then your conclusion that you already planned. So, if in the past you were used to just having like 3 sentences, okay, now we need to make sure we step it up, because 3 sentences will not cut it. You have to elaborate your details. So we're going to try one, and then you can try it with your own essay, and this is where the thinking should really take place. When you get stuck, you go back to your brainstorm and just really find all the little ideas you've already come up with. So what you need right now is something that looks just like this, and it says flea map for body of practice essay, and we're going to pause for 1 second and then do this together. So stick with me. Okay, so now you should have this paper that says flea map for body of practice essay, and this is what we're going to do together based on the previous intro conclusion about like a place you want to travel or something like that. So let's just try it together. I need you to write what I write on this so that you have a really good strong example, and if you get confused you can look to this as an example. Okay, so this might not be word for word exact, but our thesis statement was something like what we're going to write right here. So the place I would like to visit is Alaska because of its, and I'm going to try to remember what I said, but I think it was something like its outdoor activities, scenery, and food. And that may not be exactly what we had, but we could work with that. Okay? So the flea map is just going to say, you don't have to write word for word sentences. If you want to, you can. You don't have to. So our first reason is outdoor activities. Our second reason is scenery, maybe landscape, we said, something like that. And our last reason is food. Okay, and now I think I'm remembering that we said wildlife. I think the only food we had was salmon, so we'll say wildlife. All right, so here's the point. SD1 means supporting detail, a detail to support this reason. These are kind of like the big picture, and this is your details about the details. To elaborate means to say more about what you just said. If you say, I really like movies because they're funny, then you need to think of a funny movie. For example, I really liked, I don't know, Trolls. The reason it was so funny was because of all the singing and funny hair trolls. Like, you're saying it, you give a detail, and you elaborate that detail. So we're going to say outdoor activities. And maybe let's try to think of 3 different outdoor activities that you could do in Alaska. One would be hiking. One would be kayaking. And one would be, let's say, fishing. Now, if I'm going to write about kayaking and fishing together, then I need to say like boating and just use those as my examples. But I would not fish from a kayak in Alaska. So, hiking. And then we want to elaborate. And I just like to use bullet points. You do what you works best for you. I would just use bullet points. So hiking. So we could say there's lots of trails, such as, I don't know what, we could look it up. And then maybe hiking, you could actually go on a glacier. So we have trail hiking and glacier hiking. Like hiking on a glacier, pretty cool. Kayaking, you could kayak in the rivers. You could also do the Pacific Ocean. Fishing, you could catch salmon, and you could, I don't know much about fishing. That's something people do when they go fishing. Enjoy peace. Sure. Your paragraph wrap-up is the same as your topic sentence. Like, first, Alaska has many outdoor activities. Blah, 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 blah. Talk all about them, and then say something like outdoor activities are one reason I would like to visit Alaska. I want you to be picky about phrasing your wrap-up sentences so that you're saying the same thing. It's like the top bun and the bottom bun of a hamburger. They have similar purposes. They are not exactly the same. So first, Alaska has many outdoor activities. Then you're going to talk about this one and then give more about it. Talk about this one, more about it. Talk about this one, more about it. Wrap it up. And that's your paragraph. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sentences. Good to go. Let's go for scenery. Maybe we said landscape in the last one. You could say mountains. Water. Waterways. Forests. I'm trying to think of different types of scenery. Don't say like trees, oak trees, pine trees. You want different types. So one is Mount McKinley, Denali National Park. This happens to be. Waterways. You could talk about the coast. You talk about rivers, and really you're just focusing on the scenery, so you're not talking about what you would do, you're just talking about how it looks, and you would actually describe it. Forests, you could talk about they're deep and thick, go for miles. So, next, Alaska has, and I don't want to say good scenery, so I'm going to say maybe like impressive scenery, period. It has all these mountains, here they are, describe, 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 elaborate. And then I just try to switch it, just flip it. You're talking about this here. So the scenery is another big reason to visit Alaska. I feel like at this point you might get the point, but we're going to do one more just to show you it's possible. The last one we said was wildlife. So you want to give examples. We could say bears, moose, and then wildlife could also include plants. So bears, you have brown bears, actually have Kodiak bears, grizzly bears. And you don't just want to list bears, but maybe talk about them. So I'm going to say like story about a Kodiak bear. If I decide that plants are not that exciting, I could say sled dogs, because I just remembered that was on my brainstorm. Moose, I could talk about story about car hitting moose. And I don't need to write out the whole story, but I would know that in my paragraph, I'm going to like include the story. P.S. The story is that one time my granddad came across a moose when he was driving through Alaska, and instead of the car hitting him, the moose hit his car with his horns, just like rammed him and demolished his car. Now that may not seem like a reason to go to Alaska, but to me that's pretty cool and I'd like to see it in person. Okay? So don't just say like, oh, and you should never go there because a moose will hit your car. Like bring it back to why you want to visit. Lastly, sled dogs, you could talk about the Iditarod race. You could talk about husky puppies, farm, I'd really love to see. I would probably say something like, finally, the wildlife in Alaska is a major reason to visit. So here's what we have. We have a plan. This is not your essay. This is the plan. And if you had your introduction and then all of this right here, paragraph 2, and then paragraph 3, and then paragraph 4, and then your conclusion where you make a point, that would be a pretty daggone good essay. So what you're going to do now is pick up the paper that looks like this. It says Flea Map for Body of Individual Essay. And this is the one where you're going to actually do yours. You're going to put your thesis statement from your prompt that you have for this week. You're going to split it up. If you only have 2 reasons, hear me say this, if you only have 2, then you need to like just literally split this and have way more elaboration on each one. So if you only have 2 reasons, maybe it's the dress code would help teachers and students. Maybe it's I want to accomplish whatever in the future for my job and for college. If you only have 2, then you need to split this and just have more details and elaboration. If you have 3, then you could just get away with like the 8 to 9 sentences per paragraph. So try it, and see what happens. And maybe you get stuck on a couple places. Go back to your brainstorm and try to figure out how to get unstuck. But this is what you're working on once you finish your notes. Just try it. We'll work on it together.